In the spring of 2008, I went on Birthright Israel. Hey, some people have heard of this. For those of you who don't know, and especially those of you who are a little bit Jewish or are willing to lie and say that you are, Birthright Israel is a program that sends Jews to Israel for 10 days for free. They pay your airfare, your hotels, for your tour guides, most of your foods. It's pretty sweet, but the one caveat is that they're trying to sell you on the idea of moving to Israel. Now, coming from my background being a half-Jewish, bleeding heart liberal, I have a lot of my own opinions about Israel already, and I'm not really interested in being sold on Zionism. But my friend Juliet and I figured that a free trip would make a great, cheap vacation. And so we signed up to go and be skeptical together. So I had a pretty clear idea of the kind of person that I was expecting to be on this trip, having gone to Hebrew school with a bunch of the Birthright Israel types. But when Juliet and I met our tour group at the airport, all of my assumptions proved to be wrong. It was like some huge booking mistake had happened, and through some series of clerical errors, the Jersey Shore had decided to take an educational trip to the Holy Land. One of our first excursions was a trip to this Palestinian school. I was actually really surprised that Birthright would take us there. It was a delicate situation. We were urged to be on our best behavior. We were already running late, which would prove to be a problem on this trip. I have to tell you, I'm a punctual person in general, and I try really, really hard to be punctual. So the lateness factor actually drove me to a particular breaking point where I got up and went to the front of the bus and grabbed a microphone and made an impassioned speech on something called bus justice. Now, bus justice, I had gone only a couple months before on a national tour where we basically lived on a bus for like 4 months, so it was important that we be on time. And what bus justice was that for every minute you showed up late, you paid $1. But people on the tour were really respectful of each other's time, so it actually never really happened. But on this, I went up to the front, and the tour guides let me take the microphone. They loved me, in part because I actually listened to what they had to say, but mostly because my name is Debbie Friedman, and there's a famous Jewish folk singer named Debbie Friedman. And so, like, I got all this, like, unearned credit. So I went up there, I grabbed the microphone, and I started explaining to everybody what this rule was, and nobody was into it at all, unsurprisingly. And people were still coming up on the bus, like, later and later. And so there was a point where I was just like, if we were doing bus justice, you would owe me $24. You would owe me $25. And I think this is the first and possibly only time I've been, like, openly mean to a group of strangers. It means something, right? Anyway, long tangent short, we were late for this school. So they told us to get in as quickly and quietly, because school was in session, as possible to the 3rd floor. So we lined up in this single file line, sort of like hot stepping up the stairs. And then suddenly the line stopped moving, and I heard a commotion, and I started getting nervous. Like, were they going to kick us out of the school? Was something wrong? Or should we not be there? And I leaned around to get a better look, and I saw that we had created this bottleneck because a group of 8 or so people from our tour were gathered around this tiny, dumpy elevator. And I heard one of the girls whining, "It's on the 3rd floor. Can't we just take the elevator? Oh my God, we're walking to the 3rd floor." And I could not believe it. This was just an introduction to this group. The next day we went to the Holocaust Museum, which is beautiful, and it's really gorgeous. I actually went to Israel when I was 13, not because I wanted to, but that's a whole different story. And we went, and it was different. They renovated it and totally changed it, and now you have to walk all the way through the museum to exit it. So, like, there's this pathway that you have to walk down, and people on our trip just could not handle this. They were fighting each other for benches, like, as we wormed our way through the museum, like they were on their own private trail of tears. And as I walked by 2 girls, they were, like, massaging their feet, being like, "Oh my God, how long is this? This is awful." And I was like, "You guys, it's not Six Flags, it's the Holocaust Museum, it's not supposed to be fun." And then after we went, we sat around in this little kumbaya circle to debrief after the museum, and this one girl was, I mean, the museum is very moving, like, don't get me wrong, this one girl was, like, in tears, and she was like, "I just don't understand why, if Richard Nixon knew that they were killing people, why he didn't do anything about it." And I could see the turmoil on our tour guide's face, our wonderful tour guide, Yael, who was, like, torn between comforting her and and telling her she had the wrong war and might be a moron. On the third day of our trip, the Israelis joined us. So in this effort to make you feel more connected to Israel, Birthright asks a few members of the Israeli army to join your tour, to try to get you to be friends with people there so that you like them, see how cool they are, and then you want to move there. So they gave us some older soldiers. They were like 25. But what that meant was that they weren't just like regular soldiers. They were people that the Israeli government had paid for to go to graduate school for something they were really good at. Like, these people were engineers, they built bridges and schools and did social work. In other words, they were really interesting and smart. One was 6'3". Seriously though, what Jewish person is 6'3"? Ask yourself that. I've met maybe two. It's amazing. Anyway, that first day we hung out with them. They were charming, they played the guitar, they told jokes. I was like, all right, you're supposed to be awesome. Okay, Birthright. But the next morning, we were climbing Masada. Now, the Cliffs Notes version of Masada is that it's this site out on a plateau in the desert where, according to the one historian whose records had survived, a bunch of Jews, rather than given to the Romans, decided to commit mass suicide. Another upper. So it has a lot of historical value. It's a really interesting place. It has a lot of symbolic value too. So a lot of the tourists go here. We were going to climb up the Roman ramp, the Romans made to invade Masada. And of course, people in our group were like, oh no, climbing, no. But there was actually one girl in our group who's in a wheelchair and had really wanted to climb the ramp with everybody. And they have a tram that goes up there too, but you know, the symbolic value of climbing the ramp, she was really disappointed. And the Israelis, who had just met her less than 24 hours ago, and by the way, it was 4 in the morning. Like, we met them, we stayed up till midnight, and then we got up at like 3 a.m. to go climb a mountain. They were like, hey, if you want to go up the ramp, you're going up the ramp. And they carried her up Masada. And I was like, all right, Birthright. Okay, you win. Our people whined and complained about walking. Their people carried one of ours up a mountain. Like, our people bought $100 shoes for a nature walk that we went on and then wanted to throw them out the next day. Their people collected those shoes and donated them to charity. Our people thought that Richard Nixon was president during World War II, and their people designed airplanes. Like, okay, alright, I still feel like Israel's a pretty complicated knot, but I'll tell you what I did learn. I'm not going to New Jersey anytime soon. Sing on New Jersey!